Welcome to the RomaPress podcast with John Solano and Andy Mattioli.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the RomaPress podcast. We hope you are doing well. Very quickly, a thank you to our newest patron over at Patreon, Joey. We thank you for your support, and of course to all of our other wonderful patrons who make this all possible. If you would like to become a patron as well, you can go to patreon.com/RomaPress. All right, well, we have Roma preparing to face a side from Veneto at the weekend, which is always fun, particularly when the match is at the Bentegori.
Are we gonna get a tourist invitation?
No, I'm exhausted, and anything I say will just be a regurgitation as to growing up in Veneto and why I am bitter and why I am
a podcast host,
and why I am so jaded in my life. Why I am so jaded, where you go to outside the Bentegori, or forget even the stadium. You fly into either to get the Vicenza again. You either have to fly.
There we go. I knew it.
You have to fly into either Verona.
There we go.
Or Venezia. Pick your poison. Really, they both suck.
Marco Polo. You want the Marco Polo?
The best airport in the world. If you fly into Venezia, tourists galore. A bunch of old people. And that's it.
that's the Italian population. What is
no? Hold on. It is all every time I fly there. Okay, it is all Germans, Dutch, and that's it, and American. But
well, yeah, because they need the humidity. They need the humidity and the grayness of the Veneto region, and that's what you get.
Well, the best part
that's
is
what you pay for.
Again, we're both born in the country, but then we also spent significant time in other countries as well.
Yes.
It isn't like I have to be punished when I'm in the U.S. by living in Cleveland, Ohio is the Vicenza of the United. I mean, it is mind-boggling to me. And now you are in different countries. I mean, I will talk to you one day. You're in.
Yes.
You are in some Spanish island, and then the next you are at a bar in Vermont dancing with a cougar, trying to make some things happen with you.
Exactly.
But let me just say, when it comes to Italian football stadiums, you will find no lower tier than the Veneto region.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to Venezia, where, as I told everybody when Venezia was in Serie A some years ago, if you go to watch Roma play away against Venezia, you have to bring a construction hat. You have to. Now, if you want to see them play, and I've said this a million times, whether it's Chievo Verona, well, RIP, or Hellas Verona, you don't need a construction helmet. You need to wear extra padding on your shoes because, as you said, the odds of you stepping onto a needle while en route to the stadium, relatively high. So, more of the same, really.
And if you need to go to the bathroom, you'll be walking in raw sewage.
Right. Yes. Now, at least when you do so at the Dallara, at least you have the charm surrounding you.
I'm pretty sure that the Veneto tourism administration really needs a boost, and we are open for work opportunities. So we welcome any kind of ads that the Veneto region would like to run on this podcast, because every time that Hellas Verona plays Roma, John goes full Veneto rage mode, and that's why they stay up. That's why they don't go to Serie B, because every time that they go into a playoff game, and to try and fight relegation, you go out of your way to say, oh, they're going down, and then that's exactly the opposite of what happens. So you're doing it to yourself, man. And here we go.
It's true.
We got another beautiful weekend in Verona, and we're looking once again at going to the Bentegodi. Hopefully, the pitch will be in semi decent conditions. The weather will be semi acceptable, and there we go again. It's
Right,
like
right.
it's like that, it's like that guy from the street that you don't like, and he's constantly saying, hey, what's up, man, and you have no interest in pursuing a conversation, but at the end of the day, he'll catch you at a moment where you have nothing else better to do, and you'll be like, okay, whatever, I'll kid it with him a couple of hours, and
Well, at least you
let's
can
get it
say
over
when
with.
people ask which part of the country you hail from, you can at least you have the benefit of saying a region, that people fair the name recognition. When I say Vicenza and when I narrow it down more specifically to Asiago, nobody knows what
Oh, come on, man.
what I am
No,
talking.
that's not true.
Do you know what I say? I promise this is the last complaint I will say of it. I just say near Venezia or near if
Yeah,
I'm in
yeah,
the United States, I
beautiful.
just say
Yeah, yeah,
near
yeah.
Venice. That's it. That's what I say. I don't even say specifically because I'm too embarrassed. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you're from Riverside and you say, "Oh, I'm from Los Angeles." That's pretty much how it works.
yeah. I mean, so if you want to know why I'm so jaded and why why I am who I am, that's the simple explanation. So,
That'll be a whole other episode of why
yeah,
John
we'll leave that
Solano
for
is
another
John
day.
Solano. That's
So there's no need for me to use this as my therapy any further. I will say, before we get into Roma Verona, better late than never, because Roma are closing in on Sardar Azmoun, a guy who should have joined the club, what, 2 years ago?
2021.
Yes, instead of
2021.
Shomurodov.
Yep.
A guy
I remember
who
you were in direct contact with him. Yeah.
direct contact. In fact, with his, when people get could if you don't speak Italian, and when we do those articles, Andy, Jesus, Andy, and we write the word, and it is a bit cringe when we say like the entourage.
Yeah, the entourage. Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
knows really what that is, other than a television show that was okay in the beginning and then really fell off in
Yeah.
latter stages.
Nobody knows what it means, but it's provocative. That's
Yeah,
from Step Brothers.
great. Yes, nobody knows what that means. Asmoon is one of the things when we write, or I have wrote in the past. I'm fairly certain I still have a tweet out there saying he is very, very close. Entourage. I actually mean a group of people who oversee this guy's affairs. I had to talk to a father, a cousin, actually two cousins, and then an uncle
Yeah.
once or twice removed. Just people who in my life, to find the equivalent of who I had to talk to for this guy's family, I don't even know who they would be. I don't even know where they live. Never met them for my family. But this guy, he has an
That's
entire.
how football works. And people don't understand it, but like the whole deal with Samardzic with Inter, that's exactly why it collapses, because you got fathers, you got cousins, you got uncles messing up the deal with Rafaela Pimenta, who was a legitimate agent, trying to do something, and the family getting in the way. Or like when you were in
Yes.
contact with Diawara's entourage, it ranged from lawyers to grandfathers. Like that's
Everyone needs their taste, man. It's
yeah.
unfortunate. Should any of my children ever make it, if one of my 11 children ever make it to the top flight of professional football, even at a moderately high level, I will disappear. You won't hear a thing from
You
me.
will not be part of their entourage.
It
You will not.
blows my mind how many people, too many cooks in the kitchen. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how. Like it is astounding to me that a guy at this
But a
level,
guy like Azmoun, 20 years old, in Iran international, played in Zenit, now played in Bayer Leverkusen. Of all people, this guy has a big team representing him and overseeing his affairs.
yeah, and I cannot tell you or express enough. And I know you just sort of outlined it there, but how significantly when you deal with a player who has a representative structure such as this, how significantly it complicates any sort of deal. Commissions, agent fees, all of this crap, man. It is, you dial it up by a factor of 20 when you have these things. I can't stand it. I think UEFA is long overdue to restructure how agents, and there is some talk of it, how agents are paid and they sort of the influence they are able to have. Just as you said, that deal with Inter Samardzic, you have Rafaela Pimenta who sets up the entire thing, and then it's ready to go. And then at the last moment, to have his father come into come into the fold and say, "Actually, you know what? That scratch on the back end, we need to be a bit higher." And then Inter, rightfully, by the way, saying, "No, no, 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 no. You may have been able to do that with the 25th um, version of Vicenza and Serie C. But no serious club should ever put up with this stuff, and I'm actually glad to see that Inter did that, because clubs need to take a stand against this crap, because it is just, it's wholly unprofessional. It is something that you would only expect in Italian football. However, it does happen elsewhere quite consistently. But that is my long-winded way of saying better late than never. Finally, my tweet that is 3 years old of him being close can actually bear some sort of fruit. Um, Andy, for him, for Azmoun, it really is a story of two chapters. You have you have his time in Russia, and you have his time after Russia. The in Russia, very good chapter. The after Russia is the Godfather 3 equivalent of a player's career.
See, there you go. Once again, you go with the Vicenza thing, and I will have to go with the defending of the Godfather 3 thing. I can't,
Okay, well, I don't know. Somebody else
I
come up
will
with a better
not
thing.
stand the slander of Godfather 3, it's excessive. Okay, I don't like it, so we have to come up with another way of saying these things, because at this point it's just hurtful and mean to Sofia Coppola. Okay,
Do,
she's
do,
innocent, so is Andy Garcia, so is Eli Wallach and Joe Montana. Okay, it's a wonderful cast. Some questionable subplots, yes, but the whole movie still moves, still flows. I still strongly recommend it.
okay, fine. Then you can recommend it. My everlasting image burned into my head of Azmoun. Do you remember that sitter that he missed against Roma in the Europa League? I mean,
Yeah, like
sitter, Andy,
that was on the
sitter, a
in the.
sitter.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a sitter. It wasn't the return
Oh,
leg. It
but
was no, come on. It was in the final 10 minutes. He had like two defenders on him.
NASA satellites could not have picked the thing up
Oh
that he
come.
had. That shot was so far off.
Are we
Come
talking
on,
about the
man.
same shot? Are we talking about the same shot? Because I remember a shot where he takes the ball basically on a volley, and it just goes next
No,
to
see,
the
we're talking
Roma's
of different
post.
ones then. We're
There you
talking
go.
okay.
Well,
But
see,
anyway,
okay.
so that is my view of him. It has not gone good for him in Germany. I mean, that is putting it about as kindly and as gently as one could, in my opinion, because this guy had a ton of clubs trying to get him
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
when he
Yep.
wanted to leave Russia. Okay, so
Yep.
the number of suitors was off of the charts. Okay, and Roma
Yeah.
were so close to getting him before Shamuradov. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I watch a
Because
ton.
mind you, Shimura, or rather Azmoun at that time was supposed to come in and play in that duo with Edin Dzeko before
Yes,
Edin Dzeko changed his mind and left.
correct, and he is before Tammy, so he represents quite not getting him was really when Roma, and obviously when you had that Dzeko decide to go, that was really the turning point of the 2021 transfer market. But anyway, so since going to Germany with Bayer Leverkusen, okay, let's just go through this very, very, very quickly. 44 appearances, 5 goals, 5 assists. Oof. Prior to that, with Zenit, 62 goals, 23 assists, and 104 appearances. I, I I don't know. Part of me says this is worth the risk, and you can get the guy to perhaps explode. Maybe for one reason or another, it just did not work out for him in the Bundesliga. And this is a chance for him to come to the place, and he was very close to originally anyway. And by the way, that was at the behest of Jose Mourinho. That was at the
Yep.
request of Jose
Yes.
Mourinho. He loved this
At the
guy.
specific, at the specific request. Yeah.
So I don't know how I should feel about this. Part of me says, yes, worth the risk because 12, the figures we are looking at, okay?
10,
You
12
are
million option. Yeah.
right. You are potentially getting him at one third, quite literally one third of the price that you were talking about just over 24 months ago. But then the other part of me says, well, there is a really good reason for that. A striker who does not score goals. That's what you would be getting.
And was
So,
recently injured, so he
yeah,
might be
yes,
sidelined for a couple of weeks, something like that.
correct. So, it really depends on your general outlook of this. If you want to take the gamble and you think
Hmm.
this is worth the roll of the dice, or you think, oh, this guy just sucks and we really are not getting the level of striker needed to contribute at this moment.
Hmm.
I honestly don't know which side I am on. Admittedly, 2 years ago, when I was talking to um, perhaps I was just charmed by everyone within his family because they actually were lovely people. Maybe I just got charmed by that. I don't know. But I was excited about the prospect of acquiring him and him playing alongside Dzeko. We know that didn't work out. And I just look at the data from him in Germany. And again, that tells one third of the story. It doesn't really excite me. It really tempers any sort of enthusiasm I may have for this deal. Where do you come out of it?
Uh, okay. First of all, I didn't know that Duvan Zapata had so many fans. Like so
Yeah.
many other
Oh,
players
come
that
on.
have been linked to Roma, um, even Arnautovic, mind you. All of a sudden, once that name is gone, which, and again, mind you, Zapata's name today, while I was looking through the Italian news in order to relate some of the news on the website, uh, Zapata's name, Lukaku's name, even were all over the news. And the whole story was that those are the two names, and those are the two names, and those are the two names, and those are the only two options Roma are considering. Blah 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 blah. And nobody knew nothing about this Azmoun thing. Um, and I think that tells you a lot about how this whole cycle functions and how these stories are told, because once again people find themselves going, oh man, like now even Zapata doesn't want us and blah blah, and we, all of a sudden Zapata becomes the number one guy, whereas up until 2 weeks ago Zapata was the enemy, because Inter had gotten Arnautovic, who at that point had been the enemy because he had come in listed as an alternative to whoever else. I don't remember anymore because so many names have come up, and Roma have tried to engage in talks with so many players and their respective entourages that the list is endless at this point. Probably over 100 names this summer alone. Um, I I don't mind you. this is also again coming from somebody who doesn't believe in such strong emotions over the transfer window, which I think is probably the most pointless time of the year, because the truth of the transfer window is only revealed afterwards, after the season is done, or half, even perhaps even halfway. That's when the truth of the transfer window comes out, and that's where it's, I think, only right to to react strongly to something. I can understand that some names elicit excitement, some names elicit frustration. I don't feel strongly about Azmoun. I feel maybe strongly about the condition of a player that is injured, comes in injured, will not be able to contribute that right away. That I think that's not good. That's not good for a team that, like Roma, really needs to stay sharp and have everybody be ready to go. That's the whole point. That this squad, um, as flawed as, or as good, because it really depends on your point of view, as they are, in order to really compete with the top teams, they need consistency, and more specifically after the season that we've had, consistency in terms of of the physical condition, of the injuries, which last year have plagued us all the way until the end, and really caused us to spiral out of the top four race between March and April, and we all saw how that took a toll on us. And once again, the hope of the transfer window is not really with Roma to attract the big names, because that's not our reality, but it is to get players that can maintain a certain level of physical conditioning in order to then contribute to the team, and help the team achieve its objectives. Something that we've struggled for many years, by getting players that were important to us, even someone like Paulo Dybala, very important to us, but that in uncertainty with regards to his physical condition, put us in a tough spot on a number of occasions. So getting somebody like Azmoun, who's injured, maybe the injury is not that serious, but it's gonna keep him sidelined for 2 or 3 weeks. You're already off to the wrong start. Um, Somebody who has had trouble scoring goals over the last year and a half, really, because he came in to Bayer Leverkusen the first year he played in Bundesliga, at 9 appearances or something like that. He was there halfway. So anyway, when we were talking about this striker, it was in order to get somebody that is proven, that has had experience of scoring goals, and that can make a difference when called upon. Well, this is a guy that made the difference in Russia. That's a whole different world. Um, and I mean, you have planes falling from the sky, and Putin killing people left and right. So I'm
I
glad
was
that Azmoun got out of there. But
yes.
that's a different reality.
I
That's,
had no idea where that was going, but yes.
we we don't have we don't, unfortunately, we don't have planes falling out of the sky, and Wagner group leaders falling out of the sky. So it's a different reality for him, and it's gonna be interesting or challenging to see somebody who has struggled come into a situation where it's required of him to be right there, ready to go. I think the difference in between him and Zapata, because again, we love this. I love to see that this change, because now all of a sudden, oh, even you couldn't even get Zapata. As if 2 weeks ago you didn't treat Zapata the same way you're treating Azmoun right
Yeah,
now.
as if he didn't score what, 2
I,
goals last season?
2 goals last season, missed a long time. So basically, I mean, there's very little difference. Okay, like the Zapata, his best years are behind him, and Zapata's best season was over 2 years ago. So more or less, you're looking at similar profiles in terms of experience and so on. Um, it comes down to, once again, Roma being in a position where they have to choose Atalanta, who are forcing a permanent deal for Zapata, who is Zapata. What is 32? Is that fair to say? Zapata 32, the famous Roma Press research. Yes, he's 32 years old. getting Duvan Zapata on a permanent deal versus getting a younger player who has had problems both in terms on the pitch and off the pitch in terms of injuries, but on loan with the buy option. If you choose to ignore at the end of the season, that's fine. And you don't have to tie yourself to a player that doesn't give you the answers you want. I think at the end of the day, really, it comes down to that. It comes down to potentially Atalanta changing terms, being like, "Hey guys, we don't want this to be a loan with an option that then turns into an obligation. No, we want this to be a permanent deal." And Roma saying, "Well, no, because we can't do it. We don't want to. He's 32, so what? We sign him on a permanent deal, 3 years. So by the time he supposedly leaves the club, he's 35, and he's had so much trouble in the infirmary. No way. So let us take, because again, the reality has to sink into some fans, and I understand, because again, when I was reading the news today, the reality that I was being sold by the newspapers this very morning was that if it's not Zapata, it's Lukaku. Until the very last, until Gianluca Di Marzio broke the news of Azmoun, everybody was on that Lukaku train, and it's not fair. It's not fair to fans, because then the perception is, oh well, Roma really have to go for the star players. No, Roma really don't have to do that, and they're actually not in a position to do that. It's it's much more realistic for Roma to go for the likes of Marco Arnautovic, Duvan Zapata, or Azmoun, when their whole objective for the summer was to find the replacement of Tammy Abraham. Not even Tammy Abraham's successor. No, a temporary replacement of injured Tammy Abraham for the duration of this season. The starting striker this season was always going to be Andrea Bellotti. The player that was supposed to come in was supposed to be a player that can partly cover for Bellotti on the nights in Europe, on the cold evenings at the Ferrari Stadium, whatever. Those were so we have to understand that that's the reality. Alvaro Morata was never going to come to Roma to play second fiddle to Andrea Bellotti. Same thing as Romelu Lukaku, a guy that is likely to end up with nothing in his hands, and for whom Chelsea are asking 40 million pounds, and nobody's willing to give it to him.
As if Roma magically would have that money,
no,
by the way.
Exactly.
I mean, come on.
That's the whole point, is that we're being sold these stories that then get, all of a sudden, in people's minds, get turned into reality. All of a sudden, Roma are looking for players that are better than Tammy Abraham as Tammy Abraham's temporary replacement. Like, how is that even possible? It doesn't work like that. Roma are not Real Madrid. They cannot have the backup option being better than the supposed starter. Nobody's taking away that starting spot from Andrea Bellotti. Nobody's taking that starting spot from Tammy Abraham, who's injured and who will be out until the early start of 2024. The point was to bring in somebody that can give you a few goals here and there, and who doesn't force you to use Dybala as a false nine in case of Belotti's absence, or El Shaarawy as a false nine, or whatever weird combinations. That was the point. So if you're able to even get, say, 10 goals in all competitions, mind you, that's me being very, over the top. 10 goals in all competitions from this backup option. I mean, that's money in the bank. That's lovely.
Yeah, that's striking gold. Yeah.
But that's again, those are the expectations that media set out. And then there is the reality, which is different. The reality is the real names on the list are Marco Arnautovic, Duvan Zapata, and Sardar Azmoun. Marco Arnautovic, who's 35, has had injuries, scored a decent amount of goals for Bologna, but besides that, unremarkable career. Duvan Zapata, who's 32 years old, has had a terrible injury history over the past 2 seasons. Last good season was in 2020, 2021. And then you have Sardar Azmoun, who was incredible in Russia and then underperformed in Germany and is now injured. That's really what you can pick. The only difference is that Arnautovic joined Inter on a permanent deal. Duvan Zapata was supposed to join us on a permanent deal, and Sardar Azmoun is likely going to join us on loan with a buy option. And those are the favorable terms, and Roma have to operate on that basis, not on who's stronger, who's better, but on which option will cost us less in the future, which option will not come back to haunt us in 2-3 years' time.
I think it's simple as that. I don't know how many more forewarnings we need to give to people sometimes ahead of the market, Andy, because nobody ever listens, so there's no point in it anymore. But I will just say one more time. You can have 1 billion euros fall from the sky into the lap of Roma. They wouldn't be able to spend it because of the UEFA, uh, the the rules that they have put into place for Roma that they need to follow after they broke the financial fair play rules, along with who else? It was Juve, Milan, Inter. They can't spend money that they are not getting in the form of revenue, and it's as simple as that. It sucks. I don't like it. I would love to see Roma, you know,
Oh yeah,
is spending on Lukaku, but come on, please.
it's we are basically made fun of very often for coming on here and I guess presumably excusing some of these deals. And when I come on here and talk about Azmoun, I said it outright. I don't think it's a good deal in terms of the player himself, in terms of what is required for the season. But there is my opinion, and then there is what Roma can do at that moment. And that is really the difference. Like that's the bottom line is we all have opinions and we all have views and we would all love to have a really strong team, but then there is that crippling reality that does not allow you to go beyond a certain limit. And so with Azmoun, you're getting one more question mark. And mind you, this is a transfer window of question marks. You notice Rasmus Christensen, that's a question mark. Maybe the closest, Hussein Mawar, another question mark, guy who hasn't played basically for a whole year. Renato Sanchez, filled with injuries. I mean, this guy is riddled with injuries. Leandro Paredes, underwhelming season at the PSG, underwhelming season at Juve, question mark. The only maybe closest one to not being in question mark is Evan Dika, who is not starting so far for the club. So it is a transfer market of question marks, which can have an upside, that can have a potential, and that can turn out to be a surprise. But mostly, Roma have to rely on question marks, with Azmoun being the latest one, because that is what the reality of the situation is. Now, I would love to come on here tomorrow and be like, oh wow, we actually were bullshitting, and Romelu Lukaku is actually joining and is gonna bank in 20 goals, 25, whatever the figure, and that would be lovely. But it's that's a fantasy world, and this is the reality right now. The reality is that we go to the Bentegodi. Hopefully none of the players will make use of the bathrooms while they're there, in order not to get any sort of infections and sicknesses and viruses and whatever. And we're gonna play once again with Andrea Bellotti as our starting striker. We're gonna have Paulo Dybala return from suspension, Lorenzo Pellegrini return from suspension. We're gonna have Bruno Conti on the bench again, and that's the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is also that we are not guaranteed the 3 points against Hellas Verona, because this is football. It's not. We're not Real Madrid. We are not known for going out of our way, making things easy and crushing a lesser opponent. things are tough. This is Roma. It's this is not, this is not a walk in the park. It was it never was meant to be.
That is the best way to put it and to end an episode concerning anything even remotely connected to Veneto, Verona by extension. Let's just end it there. Obviously, fingers will be crossed for the weekend. We will hopefully see Roma be victorious at the Bentegori. And, this is still very early. Like you said, having such strong opinions on the market, to me, it is a fruitless exercise simply because when have things ever, you know, when it comes to a player at Roma, gone exactly to plan? I mean, Andy, last year at this time, it felt like we were prepared to throw a parade for Wijnaldum coming to Roma. And I can't recall a single thing he did at the club other than get injured
That's
after
exactly
it.
how it works. That's exactly how it works. Exactly. That's precisely my point. Is that there is no point, no point where the excitement or the frustration ever pay off. Maybe Dybala is that singular case where it
Yes.
actually works out and maybe it even exceeds the expectations, the feelings that his transfer elicited last summer. But usually with the transfer window, at the end of the day, it's business. It's business, and in this economy that Roma are functioning in, it's a business based on having zero money at your disposal, and being able to spend zero money. So it's a business of endless negotiations revolving around temporary deals that can't hurt you in the long run, and that's why getting worked up about it is only normal, because I mean we live, I always said it must have been so wonderful to be a freaking boomer who could read the news about Diego Armando Maradona joining Napoli in the 1980s, based on some edition of La Gazzetta dello Sport that would come out in the morning of one day and then find out the next step
Yeah.
the next day. You'd have that 24-hour period of not knowing anything, of just going word of mouth, and that was it. Your view of how the transfer window worked, it was limited to that, to a headline on La Gazzetta dello Sport. Now we live in a reality where this transfer window, names constantly popping up. You got headlines all over the place. You don't know who to trust. You're praying that some unknown fellow who calls himself a journalist has the right information. And but at the end of the day, it's just very, in Roma's case, it's very ordinary, very long, very extenuate, very tiring transactions that all revolve around the fact that Roma do not have any money to function on uh, during the transfer window. So whatever imaginary figures and whatever imaginary ambitions we may have, or the media may sell to us, there is that, and then there is the reality that Roma operate in, and the reality that Roma operate in is the reality that will bring Sardar Azmoun to the Italian capital with a 2-year delay.
Better late than never. Okay, we will be back after the weekend following Roma and their match against Hellas Verona. Until next time, ciao.